them. I know as far as their perspective, it really helps them if you guys could turn your videos on, and if you guys could sit up straight so they could actually see your face, so that they could be able to interact with you. It's difficult, I think, especially when you haven't been in a class, to interact with people if you can't see them. So if you guys could just sit on up straight and allow them to see your beautiful faces, I think that would help them out a lot. So if you don't mind, I think I'm just going to go into some of the questions. So one question starting off was, do you really think all marriages are as hard as your marriage has been? Or do you think your marriage is kind of exceptional? Or do you think most marriages go through as much as you two have gone through?
Well, I don't. You got something?
Yeah, as far as learning how to live together, because what ended up happening is that opposites attract. So you're going to end up picking somebody who's like 180 out from you. I mean, we are as different as night and day. I'm OCD, which means I'm borderline crazy, keeping things straight so I can concentrate. Andy is like, if it lands on in the chandelier, I get it later, kind of thing. That would drive me up the freaking wall until it came down. So yeah, you're going to have that kind of problem in your relationships. That's probably the first one I can think of.
I'm just wondering if maybe our marriage kind of represents a little bit of a lot of drama that might make a good movie, but the thing is that I think every marriage has its challenges. There's no question about it. You've got people coming from two different backgrounds. No matter how they grew up, they're not going to be coming from the same place. They're going to have different ideas about life. They're going to see life differently. They're going to be looking at the same thing and not see it the same way. So maybe some of the challenges we've had are a little bit more dramatic than other people's challenges, but I believe every marriage is challenged. And one of the things that, in fact, we just got an article here that we were reading. We do a lot of, part of our journey in being married a long time is to continue to study about marriage. We go to a marriage retreat at least once a year or more. We do a lot of reading about marriage and about what makes marriages successful. And there's a lot of ideas about marriage that are wrong, that people buy into. They're lies about marriage that prevent people from having a really good marriage because of the fact that they believe that, for one thing, many people believe that marriage is supposed to be a perfectly easy relationship. If it's the right person, it's going to be easy. And in actuality, if it's the right person, it's probably going to be harder than anything. So, I don't know that our marriage has any more challenges to it than others. I think maybe our marriage has a little bit more dramatic challenges, and that's probably because we're both outgoing enough to share that with other people. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we had to go through these kinds of things, because they're interesting stories to tell.
What another follow-up to that question is, people are asking, a number of people ask kind of a similar question. They ask, how are you able to take so many of these negatives and make them a positive? Or how did you take some of these difficult situations and make something good from them? Does that make sense?
I can't say that we've done that our whole almost 57 years.
Yeah.
We, like we've said before, I don't know if I said it in the video or not, but the first 22 years of our marriage, I was still drinking. I wasn't a falling down drunk, but we were just barely hanging on for the first 22 years. We were screwed up enough not to leave each other, you know, God kept us together even though through our dysfunction. And when we finally got into recovery, and by recovery, I'm talking about the 12-step program. I got into AA 35 years ago, and Mary followed suit not too long after that into Al-Anon. And between those two programs, we have grown quite a bit to understand that we don't do life by ourselves. We believe truly that every successful marriage has a support system around each person in the marriage. I've got a support system of men that surround me. Mary's got a support system of women that surround her. And lots of the things that happen between us are really hard to resolve just between the two of us. We have to like go out to our support systems and kind of air out the frustration that we have with each other, and then kind of get rid of it and then come back into the relationship to make it work, you know. So unfortunately, I already forgot the question, so I don't know if I answered it or not. But
no, the question was, how did you take some of those seemingly bad situations and make them good?
Well, again, the process of learning to be in recovery. Go ahead.
Well, and you also, with being in recovery, you've got somebody else there that you can use as a sounding board, and you could blow off steam with them. And I'm sure you guys have all got buddies, and your parents are going to do something that's just going to make you climb the wall. And if you sit down and talk to them, sometimes they can look at they see a different perspective, and they can explain to you, well, here's the way I see it. And then you're going like, oh, okay, because you listen to them. You're not going to listen to your parents because you're pissed off at them. But the thing is that you listen to them, and then it'll start to make sense. And, you know, it's really, that is paramount. You need a sounding board. You need people that, and not yes men, not some guy that's going to say, yeah, you're right. You know, you need to run away from home. You know, no, you don't want that kind of, that's not true. That's not helping you. That's not helping you grow.
And I think the other big piece of it is that our attitude's been a positive attitude. We're always looking for a constructive way to deal with something rather than spending a lot of time spinning our wheels blaming each other. So the positive attitude has an awful lot to do with us finding ways to make it all work.
And when we married, we made a contract with each other, and we meant it, and we signed on for that. And it's like, okay, we can work through this.
Yeah.
You know, we promised to death do us part. Now, you know, as if you've seen the other videos, sometimes the death wasn't necessary. We don't talk about divorce because that's a cut and run. That's the chicken way out. And I don't think anybody really heals from that. And some people go from one relationship to another, because it's easy. But the part that when you come back and you can make it work, and you can be man up and say, I'm sorry for my part in it. That's all it takes. You don't have to apologize for everything, but just saying, I'm sorry for my part is magical. Those little, I'm sorry those two words can change the whole dynamic of the situation. And it almost is impossible for her, unless she is just hell bent for leather to make you pay. It's almost impossible for her not to say, I'm sorry for my part too. And it's done. That easy. It's over.
But I think one other factor is that as we continued to go through these things, and we found that on the other side of them, we look back on it and realize, wow, we've grown from this.
Yes,
We're closer together as a result of it. The next one that came up, we were able to have a little bit more confidence that we'd be able to get through this one too. You know, so that's, you know, probably the biggest one we've run into so far is 4 years ago when she got diagnosed with the Alzheimer's. You know, that's a biggie.
That's scary.
And that can really force a marriage to be really challenged. You know, so.
It's a death sentence.
I'm glad we had all that background before us when we got here to be able to handle this in a positive way.
Okay.
All right, guys. Bennett, thank you for your questions. Gio, I still couldn't get yours. What other questions come up as you listen to Andy and Mary kind of respond? What else is on your mind?
One question that I had thought of is, why do you think that the divorce rate in the United States and just the proportion of marriages that end in divorce is so high?
I got it. Because they don't
Great
work.
question.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it is.
Kevin.
It is a great question, because they don't work through it, and because we come from an thinking that it's a throwaway society. That didn't work. I'll throw this away and I'll try another one. You know, you can't. You're talking with people. You can't do that with people. And the thing is, if you don't learn from it, you're going to make the same stupid mistakes, or even some new stupid mistakes with the next person. You know, we have all of our sons. I'm trying to think. We have 3 sons and a daughter, and I think all of them have been divorced.
Except Matt.
Right, right. And he's living on a time bomb. You know, that's the one in Australia. But because she told him several years ago that when their daughter turns 18, she's out of there. She's leaving. And she's not talking about the daughter leaving either. She's leaving. So she's already emotionally checked out. And he has been dancing as fast as he can ever since. Now he's changing. And the guy that he is becoming is really cool. And I think she's seeing what's happening with him. And she's kind of like maybe rethinking herself, but she doesn't want to come right out and say, well, I've changed my mind, you know, because I mean, we have an image to uphold.
I think if I could
Go.
pitch in with Kevin's question, I believe a lot of it has to do with the fact that internal work, looking inside
It's
you,
hard.
is really, really hard. Most people will not do that. Most people, you know, one of the things about the recovery program is that there aren't a lot of people in recovery. We're a small minority of the total population. Most people believe that happiness is something that you get from somebody else, and you know that you're supposed to be happy when you're in a marriage, and if you're not happy, then it's the wrong person.
Yeah.
And that's really not the point. The point being that the marriage, you know, you got 2 people that are 180 out coming together, attracted to each other because of their differences. After a couple of years, those differences become the very things that piss you off about the other person. And there, you know, you learn how to push each other's buttons, basically. And the challenge is that when your button gets pushed, that you don't look at the other person and say, you did this to me. You look inside yourself and say, what is it about this button that I just got pushed that bothers me so much? Why does that bother me so much? And take a look inside. And I think the majority of Americans, unfortunately, are not very grown up.
Right.
They're like children in big bodies. You know, they're not really taking a hard look at who you are. And you know, God's challenge to us is to become the best version of ourselves every day. And that means looking inside you, not looking at the other person for the fix. So I don't know if we answered your question well, but that's what came up, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. Who else has got a question on their mind? What else are you thinking about? Yeah, go ahead, Madison.
You guys obviously went through a lot of stuff. And did you guys learn to communicate effectively during those ordeals, or did you guys learn that kind of after?
Well,
A little of both, probably.
yeah, you know, this whole idea of communication is real messy. Lots of times your emotions get in the way and you say things that you really shouldn't say. Lots of times you are not really, you're only thinking of yourself at the moment. And so you're reacting from your own pain as opposed to thinking about the other person, putting it in a perspective where, you know, there's 2 of you trying to live together, and there's got to be give and take. So it's a challenge. And I would say that, to answer your question, I think it happens during. I don't think it happens afterwards. I think you try things out, and in many cases they don't work. you screwed up, you said it wrong or whatever, but you don't run away. You hang in there and try the next idea, and eventually you get to the point where you get a little better at it each time. And I think the process of going through these things are what really teach us to be better communicators. And better communication always has to do with thinking of the other person over just yourself. It's not all about you. You're in a relationship with another person. You got to think about that other person also, not just yourself.
You've probably already experienced it. You've been in an argument with somebody and you'll say something and you can tell that you hit a nerve. And you can do one of two things. You can go like, oh, I really got her that time. Or you can say, wow, that must have really hurt. Now, it takes a real man to stop and think and breathe and say, wow, I really hurt her there. And to say, I'm sorry. And most guys won't do it. They won't do it because they think they're going to lose their manhood. I'm going to look like a wuss. And no, you're not. That when he stops and he listens to himself, what he's saying, when we're in the middle of an argument, and he said, I'm sorry about what I just said. And immediately, it's all I can do to keep from bursting into tears and saying, I'm sorry too, because I'm pissed and I'm going to get mine. But eventually I usually fold and it's over it's like over and done in no time. But when we get the ego out of the way, and the ego, what we've learned in program, the ego is easing God out, EGO. And when we ease God out of the situation, who do you think moves in?
In order to maybe kind of answer that question a little bit more related to where you guys are in life right now, you're in your latter part of your teens, okay? And part of your job is to become independent of your parents. Mm-hmm. Now, in the process of getting there, you guys are probably having some issues between your parents and yourselves, and sometimes your parents are coming on pretty strong and saying things to you that are, and you react in a negative way. But what you're really trying to do is to learn how to get along and get through this to the point where you are able to be independent and on your own. So you're in the process of learning a lot of this communication yourself. And in fact, I think one of the things about marriage that's really the most important thing is that it's the foundation of the family. And you learn an awful lot about relationships from watching your parents and watching your siblings. And unfortunately, if your parents haven't done their work, your models for good relationships might not be there in front of you. And that's certainly the case for the two of us. We both came from pretty dysfunctional backgrounds where our parents really were pretty messed up themselves and really couldn't teach us what we needed to learn in order to become successful right from the start.
Because they didn't know.
So you're in the process of experiencing some of that yourself, just in the process of learning to become independent and on your own in the world.
Thank you, Madison. Anybody else got something going on they wanted to ask about?
Brendan.
Here's
Okay,
Chaz.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Chaz.
Yeah, go ahead, Chaz. You had a question?
Yeah, so you guys touched up on at the end there sort of about dysfunctional families, and do you think that people who come from dysfunctional families could also have a benefit in marriage, saying, hey, my parents did this to me, I'm not going to let this happen to my spouse or my kids?
Yeah, I think that happens with a lot of people. And unfortunately, what I also believe happens is they overdo it.
Yeah, overreact the other way.
They go too far, and it's kind of like a pendulum. They swing it all the way to the other side and actually cause damage. Because, for example, part of learning to be independent is having enough ability to make decisions for yourself. But if you're just given no direction for decisions, you're going to be making some mistakes, you know. So somewhere along the line, there's got to be some, you know, boundaries there. And if the parents aren't there to give that to you, you may completely decide to, well, my parents held me under control, and you know, didn't let me do this and didn't let me do that. When I have kids, I'm going to do just the opposite, and that's not necessarily good for the kid.
No.
to go that far to that extreme. You follow what I'm saying? So
Yeah, 180 out from crazy is still crazy.
so did we adequately answer your questions, Chaz?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
All righty. Well, I need to go grab the Xavier cohort in the chapel, so I'm going to have to wrap it up. Thank you so much for answering questions. Thanks for your attention, guys. I will see you in the flesh on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.